Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of the podcast. This week we have back with us the wonderful Ange B. And Ange has her own amazing jewelry business, and she is the handmade jeweler featured this week on the Handmade Jewellers series. So definitely go and check out her episode airing later on this week. I'll put a link in the show notes. So you'll be able to hear all about Ange B there and her journey to starting a jewelry business and see some of her work. And she teaches me how to make some really cool stress spoons, therapy spoons. I called them stress spoons, but they're actually therapy spoons. Yes, more, which is a better term to get out your stress. Anyway, we won't give it away, but it's really cool. It was really fun to film. And she's got this incredible she cave in her garden, which is like living the dream as a jeweler. So do go and check that one out this week. And today we are going to be chatting about moving into working with gold, because Ange has been a jewelry designer for quite a long time and she's worked a lot in silver. And recently she's moved more into working with gold. And obviously that has quite a significant change for us as jewelers and for our jewelry business. Sometimes it attracts different customers. There's different price points to consider. So lots of different things that change when you move into more kind of fine jewelry and working with gold. So Ange, welcome. Thank you for coming and having a chat with me today.
Hi, Jess. Thank you for having me back. It's nice to sort of catch up with you after the filming, but also having recorded a podcast with you before. It's really nice to be invited back again.
Yes, absolutely. And you guys will probably know Ange if you've listened to the podcasts, obviously if you watch the show. And Ange is also in my book, Start and Grow Profitable Jewelry Business. So we just like having you around, Ange. It's always lots of fun things to learn from you. And in the book, we talked a lot about kind of signature style, and we might touch on that a bit today as well. But I guess the main theme, as well as working with gold, is just this evolution that happens over time, doesn't it? As a jewelry designer, you're not always making the same thing, even though you may have your own style. It kind of develops and evolves. So, do you just want to tell us a little bit about your journey with that, with the evolution of your design of your pieces, and how and when you started moving into working with gold?
When I started making jewelry, for me, it was just like opening a big box of tricks and having lots of things that I wanted to learn, all at the same time. And so my style was very eclectic, I would say. I mean, looking back at my Instagram feed or even just in my phone of things that I've made in the past compared to the sort of work I'm making now, I'm a very process-led maker, so I love trying out new techniques. So a lot of the designs I made a few years ago were based on techniques that I'd learned then. The same applies now, but now I find I'm leaning more towards my geometric style. And that's something that I've always gravitated towards. And I feel it's my comfort zone with design now. So I'm trying to make that more of my signature style.
Mm. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I think we all go on a version of this journey where to begin with, we just need to learn the techniques. So we're just making what our teacher makes because that's how you learn a technique. It'd be too much to try and learn something brand new and also try and incorporate loads of stylistic changes at the same time. So I think we all start with this eclectic mix of like, well, here's like a spinner ring, and here's like a brooch that I made somewhere, and here's like some etching or some enameling, or just like random different things that we've tried out. And then, like you said, you kind of start to gravitate towards actually everything that I'm doing seems to be a little geometric, or this is where I feel comfortable or where I enjoy what I've actually made at the end. And I think you were saying a bit before we came on the call that you almost resisted the geometry for a while and then you finally accepted like actually that is what you really like. And I think kind of that journey of discovering what we like is quite a fun one too.
Yeah, I think the point about resisting it is often we're driven by, oh, what sells? So to your point about the spinner rings, a couple of years ago, you couldn't walk out the door without someone wanting a spinner ring. And I must admit, I think I only ever made one, and that was through gritted teeth. So I've decided to try and make things that please myself, but also it's about finding your niche audience, because there's room for all of us jewelers in the world, mainly because there are so many people with so many different tastes. So I think working not only towards what you like making, but also trying to find your tribe. So trying to find people that appreciate the work you do. And although that might initially seem a bit daunting, and I think that was the thing for me, thinking, okay, if I stop making all that other stuff, who's going to buy all this angular pointy stuff? I think it's a leap of faith and thinking, okay, there can't just be me who likes this sort of jewelry out there. So it's a matter of, taking the reins and holding steady and trusting in your designs and trying to make them as well as possible, as well, to appeal to a bigger audience, or your own audience, sorry.
Yes, yeah, your own audience, your own people who also enjoy the kind of aesthetics that you do, or it's not just aesthetics, but the design. And it's interesting, it always makes me think of like, having a point of view as a designer. The idea behind that for me is that you have something to say, even if it's not with words. You have something that isn't just what everyone else has. And I think, even when you're in conversation with people in groups, if somebody has no opinions, no thoughts, no ideas, there's only so far you can go with that. But when somebody sort of says, this is my point of view, this is what I think, this is how I see things, there's interest there. Sometimes we're attracted to it, sometimes we're repelled by it, but there is something to be either attracted or repelled by. And I think as we step out of just the middle lane of what we're designing and try different things, uh it's amazing how people say, oh yes, I agree with that, I like that, I see your point of view and I enjoy that. And other people say, oh gosh, that's too big for me, I only like dainty jewelry, or whatever it is. And that's okay, but it would be quite scary to have a point of view, because people will agree and people will disagree, either overtly or not. But I guess it's that confidence which you've been building up, to be able to have your own point of view.
Yeah, and it's definitely, an ongoing journey and an ongoing process of confidence. I mean, I was a couple of weeks ago, I had a real dip and thinking, oh my God, what am I doing? Maybe I should just go back to making what I was doing before. And I actually had a chat with my friend, who's also been on the show, David Lilly. I sort of rang David and said, oh, David, I need a little pep talk. And it was just really nice having someone to bounce ideas off and just get that, not necessarily validation, but just someone who says, it's okay to be different, so long as you're doing it well and you're comfortable with what you're doing and it makes you happy. And I think that's the thing. Yes, we want to sell things, but I don't necessarily want to, well, I certainly don't want to sell things that I'm not happy with, or if I know that someone can buy it from someone else and it looks pretty much the same. I want to feel like I'm kind of growing, but also true to myself as a maker.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that does come with time. And like you said, you never get to the point where you're like, I'm done. I've got all my confidence now. I know everything I'm going to make in the future now. It's like that continuous evolving. And I love what you said about calling up David, because I think it's so important that we have like designer friends, like jewelry friends who are on a similar path to us, who can give us the pep talks, because sometimes we do need it reflected back, even though we know it. We sometimes need other people to say, it's okay to have a wobble, it's okay to doubt yourself, that's part of the process. But you are being true to yourself, you are doing the right thing for you, and just keep on that journey, and you'll learn so much more that way, I think. That's awesome. So then, talking about gold, when did gold kind of come into your repertoire of things? Did you do it quite early on when you were learning, or has it been something recent, or anything in between?
It's been relatively recent, to be honest. I'd say in the past couple of years. I've had people prior to that approaching me and asking for pieces, say, oh, I really like that. Does it come in gold? And I'd say no, but I can make it for you in gold. And they gasp at the cost. And I would then they'd say, well, can you make it in gold plated? And this has probably been the biggest sticking point for me because I've always tried to run my business around an ethical ethos. And having done my research as much as I can into the provenance of gold and in particular gold plating, I wasn't really happy with what I was finding from an environmental standpoint. Um, and ethically, also, how gold is produced, where it comes from, the quality of gold plating out there. To my mind, it's something that's quite can be quite wasteful. If someone's buying something that's gold plated, and gold plating, unless they tell you how many microns of gold it is, you don't know, can be of varying quality, and that means that its lifespan can be limited. If you have a piece of jewelry that starts to look a bit tarnished, you're not necessarily going to want to wear it, and then it's sort of confined to the bottom of a jewelry box, or worse still, to landfill. And so that was my main issue with going down the gold plated route. So when I took the step of going into gold, it naturally recycled gold seemed to be the right thing for me. So I started off actually quite a strange way. I had a client who'd commissioned a piece of jewelry from me a few years ago, and she came back 2 years ago and said, oh, Ange, you might find this a little bit odd, but I've just been to the dentist.
Where this is going.
If you're slightly squeamish, sort of cover your ears now. And I've had a couple of gold crowns removed. Would you consider doing something with them for me? Ever the adventurer. Of course, I said yes. So a few weeks later, I got these rather, I'd say, disgusting looking gold crowns, 14 karat gold crowns in the post, which I duly melted and then made into some, what I thought was, and she agreed, some lovely stud earrings for her. So that was my first experience of actually making with gold. And it was great, A, because it was, truly recycled, and also she wasn't too fussed about the aesthetic of how it came out. She said, I know it was part of a tooth before. It doesn't have to be fancy, but they actually came out really well, and it was a nice way of sort of easing myself into it without feeling the pressure of making something that had to look sort of truly beautiful and high fine jewelry. So yeah, that was my first nail biting experience.
It's amazing though, isn't it? I love it when an opportunity like that comes up because, like you said, the pressure wasn't on. So it sounds like she had these bits anyway, and she wasn't expecting too much. And I'm sure that you delivered something amazing, but just that you didn't have to is quite nice, because I think one of the most challenging things about working with gold is the pressure we put on ourselves. It reminds me of that thing, like if you walk across a tightrope that's a few centimeters off the ground, you can do it fine. But if you put it up like, many stories in the air, then none of us, well, a lot of us would really struggle, even though you're doing exactly the same thing. It's that pressure, that fear, I suppose, that if it goes wrong, will the risks are higher. So that's a really fun way to kind of start. And so you're working with 14 karat, and then how did it progress from there? Did you do your customers kind of order things and then you work with gold, or do you ever create pieces in gold to sell afterwards, which obviously has its own risk because you're investing up front? And I guess the other question, which might be easy to answer at the same time, is what kind of carats do you work with? Because obviously 9 carat is more affordable, but it's quite challenging to work with, and doesn't always have the really like gorgeous gold color that you can get with the higher carats. So maybe you can talk a bit about those things.
Yeah, so after the earring experience, I decided to make a small collection that incorporated some mixed metal pieces, so with gold and 9 carat. And again, I consulted a couple of jeweler friends who said, look, 9 carat, it's a devil to work with, but from a costing point of view, it's probably a safe place to start. And also going from that lower price point that my existing customers were used to, if I suddenly went to 18 or 14, that just seemed like such a massive jump. So I started off with a small collection in recycled 9 carat. It was challenging, must admit, to work with, but again, a brilliant learning experience. And also I felt that I didn't really have anything to lose. I only make pieces to order, so the collection I made a full set. If someone wanted it, I would then remake it. And I felt that any pieces that didn't sell, I could always, melt down, recycle, and make something else with. So it didn't feel like such a massive stretch. And also combining silver and gold felt like a nice sort of smooth way to transition from silver to gold rather than suddenly being silver and into really blingy, yellow 14 or 18 carat. And I think the color transition works as well from, silver to 9 carat. So yeah, there was sort of a few different things came into my mind when I made that step. But yeah, certainly it is a big commitment if you're looking to, make more pieces in gold. It's always something to think about from a financial point of view.
Yeah, it sounds like you did it in a really gentle way, though, in that you created this collection. And like you said, you only made one of each. So you didn't have loads of stock that you had to invest in other than the initial collection. And then I think having mixed media, like you said, gold accents maybe on silver or combining gold with silver means that, particularly, from what I know and seen of your jewelry, it's quite chunky. There's quite a lot of metal. So if that were to be solid, all solid gold, we're talking definitely thousands of many thousands of pounds, which, like you said, is quite a big leap. And I think taking your customers on the journey with you, especially people who followed you for quite a while, might be like, oh, there's now a piece where there's bits of gold, and they might not be ready or ever able to invest in something that's solid gold, but there's that interim stage, which is quite a nice way to do it. And then what happened after that? What happened after this collection? Take us on the rest of your gold journey or the next step.
Yeah. So, so after that collection, I decided to add um, other gold pieces from existing collections. So, for example, my Pentageo earring collection, it has the signature asymmetric five-sided shape throughout the collection, but there's also one pair that you can get that are in 9 carat gold. Because again, some people were asking, oh, does that come in gold or can I have it gold plated? And going back to the sort of gold plated point, the thing that I think is, worth considering as well, and was a big consideration for me, is it does narrow down your audience because so many people are selling 9 carat gold for whatever selling gold plated. So, for whatever reason, totally respect that. But it means that if you aren't doing that, then you're narrowing your audience because there are people who are willing to buy gold plated. So that's something I have wrestled with on and off, but I've decided to sort of stick with my guns because I feel that I can't be half-hearted about my ethics. And it's kind of all or nothing. And sometimes that does feel like a big sacrifice, but it's something that I feel that, I'm prepared to do. And so transitioning from gold hasn't been as scary because I try and keep the sort of output quite small. So it's on demand, so to speak. So if someone sees one of my existing pieces and asks, can I make it for them in gold, then I do it on request, as opposed to just having lots of gold pieces in my collection. The other thing that I did do as part of my scholarship that I had with Morley last year, I set myself a goal of working with gold, so that I had to, push my skill set a little bit more. And in that instance, I worked with 14 carat, which was even more scary because this was gold that I had to buy myself. And so, the sort of risk of melting at certain points was quite high. There was lots of screaming coming from the she cave. But I did successfully, make a couple of pieces that I'm quite pleased with. So yeah, it's been a sort of steady journey to the point where now I'm getting commission requests where people are asking for gold, and I feel more comfortable incorporating that into my designs.
I think that's really nice how you've done it, because I think sometimes we imagine that one day we wake up and there's a solid gold collection and we just put it out there and we've like remortgaged the house to make it happen, and then we just hope that people will come and buy it. And it puts a lot of pressure on jewelers, I think, if it's done that way. I mean, we all have our own journeys, and sometimes, wild and crazy things work. But what's nice is it feels like it's been very organic for you. Like people have just started to come to you and ask for it. And I love what you speak about in terms of sticking to your ethics and essentially saying no to something that doesn't feel right for you, and whatever that may be. I think it is hard to turn down work, which is essentially what we're doing. And a lot of jewelers, I'm sure, can relate to that in different ways, whether it is something to do with ethics, such as plating and feeling like that doesn't align with your values, or whether it's something just like a design. I've seen a lot of talk recently. I'm sure this may have happened to you as well, Ange, where someone says, "Can you make this but cheaper?" and shows you another design as well. Like, there's so many things wrong with that statement, but they don't understand. To them, it's just, it's not their world, so they don't understand that they're both insulting you and the designer at the same and actually saying, well, maybe if you like that work, buy it from them, and if you'd like something that I make, buy it from me. But I think, especially when we're building a business, and if profitability, is a consideration, which it is for pretty much all of us, and especially if we're not sure about what's coming, to say, no, I'm not going to offer that, even though other people will, can be tricky. But I think it really pays off in the long run, because, like you said, it's that point of view of someone saying, actually, I get Ange, I get her business, and I trust her, because jewelry is a trust-based purchase, and you're building that trust with the people who have, similar ethics to you. And they may not be exactly the same. They may not care about plating or not plating, but just a general vibe of how you are, I think, comes across. So I'm sure it's going to be helpful to people to hear about your experience of that, because I think we all have a version of that. And I was going to ask you as well about pricing and people's reaction to pricing, because I think, you said, like, people say, "Oh, does it come in gold?" as if it'll be like just a little bit more. And then you quote the gold. Have you had kind of reactions to that, and how have you dealt with that within yourself? Like, has it brought up any doubt, or, are you quite solid on those things anyway?
It's certainly pricing, I'm sure, as it is for everyone, listening, and jewelers out there. It's an ongoing struggle. And I think, again, prior to doing my scholarship, it was something that I had, many more doubts and issues around. I mean, going back to your point about people asking you to make something, that they've seen, or essentially copy something. I had a lovely example a couple of years ago, a lady who came to see me at Open Studios, and she saw my big cuffs and she said, "Oh, I love these, but I want to, can you make this one for me?" And she's pointing at an Elsa Peretti Tiffany cuff. And I said I could, but then it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be my work. It would be a copy of a very beautiful design. So I said, "I'm quite afraid I can't do that." And so she ummed and ahed, and then came back again. And I said I could do something like it. And she said, "Oh, how much would that be?" And she sort of gasped when I told her the cost. And then walked away again, and then came back. Which is fair enough, but I could tell that she was definitely interested. She kept picking up my other pieces and looking at them. And then she asked me why. And when I felt quite pleased with myself at that point, that I was able to hold my nerve and explain to her that I'd be making something custom made for her, the time it took for me to design it, to make it to her design, to make it to her fit, the materials involved, the time involved. She ummed and ahed, took my card, and then came back and proceeded to place an order. But was what was really lovely was that 2 days later, unbeknownst to her, her son called up and said, "Oh, my mum really wants two of those. Can I order another one?" So he ordered one in secret. So she
Oh.
had two cups made. But it was really nice. And they both paid the same price. But I just felt very proud of myself for sticking to my guns. There was a point where I thought, oh, she's not going to go for this. I should have lowered my price. But no, I think it's about knowing your worth. And also, if someone, as you say, sees the value of what you do and you can justify it, then that's all well and good. And I think it's the same with gold. It's a much more valuable metal. And again, going back to the ethics of it, how it's mined, where it comes from, the more time that's taken into that and finding out the provenance of it will obviously increase the value, as opposed to gold that's been mined from several different places. So I think if your customer base appreciate that and you're willing to convey that message, there will be some that will see that and be happy to pay that price.
Yes, yeah. Well done for doing that, because it's not an easy thing to do, is it? Especially when there's like multiple comebacks with various different things to kind of talk about. And I think it's so easy as jewelers, on our side of the fence, I suppose, to get defensive and want to kind of, sometimes almost with a passion kind of explain like, that's wrong what they're saying. But I think, how do they know? This isn't their world. For them, they've just walked in, they've seen some jewelry, and they're asking questions from a point of view of not understanding so many things. So I think the fact that you're able to like, sit with her and sort of say, oh, these are the reasons why, in a really calm and like helpful way. She learned something that day. And it was making me think about, we teach people how to treat us, they say. And I think, you taught her that like this is the price and this is why. And then when her son came back, he did the same. Whereas if you had undercut yourself and sort of felt a bit resentful, like, oh, I didn't charge enough. And then you get another order, you're like, now I've got to make another one for not enough. It's like, and the right people will stay, and the people that we don't want to stay won't. But I think that that's something for us all to kind of navigate. It's always useful to talk about because we all face it, and it brings in like rejection, acceptance, so many different like core things that could be really difficult to deal with on your own. So yeah. And then you spoke a bit about the mining of the gold, and I know you mentioned before that you're certified fair mined kind of jeweler, so working with that type of gold. So do you want to talk a bit about what that means and how your journey along that path with the gold as well?
Yes, I mean, that just felt like a sort of natural extension of trying to make my business align with my values as much as possible. And, I try to sort of not only have my values in my business, but in my life generally. So I don't buy new clothes. I source all my furniture and things like that secondhand or wherever possible. So I feel like I need to make my jewelry business as ethically in line with how my life is. And so I did some research around the origin of gold, how it's mined. And again, another jeweler friend put me in touch with Fair Mind and Fair Luxury. And I took the Fair Luxury pledge last year. And part of that was becoming a licensed Fair Mind brand, whereby you buy your metals from them. Now, for transparency, their price points are a lot higher, and I don't currently buy metals from them unless my customer requests it for a commission. But what I'm looking to work towards is, again, a small collection that is purely Fairmind origin, silver or gold. And again, it's about trying to not only be more ethical in my business, but also sort of niching myself down. So again, if there are people who are very specific, and I have had people come to me who said, oh, I want a wedding ring and it has to be fair mind, or I want this piece of jewelry for my partner, and I really want to know where the gold comes from. That's something that I'd like to be able to offer. So that was one of the main reasons for becoming a licensed brand.
I love that. And I love that you talked about how it's niching you down as well, because I think that, all through your story, you're talking about kind of saying no to various things and yes to other things and how it's shaping your business, which is really cool because I think these are the decisions we're all making every day without sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, like, what do I want my business to look like? And it's not to say that everyone should look the same. For some people, their values will be different. It'll be about affordability and other things. And there's value in all the values. But it's really nice to kind of hear how you're finding your niche. And I think what's nice as well is sometimes you feel like, ethics, you either do it 100% or you're not doing good enough. And I like that you're sharing how you're moving towards that. You've got, if your customer says they want this specific kind of sourcing, then you're able to offer that. And it may be that one day that's all you do, or it may be that you keep it open. So it's quite, yeah, it's interesting to hear about that side of your journey. And yeah, have you noticed your customers change at all, or have people kind of come with you? Because your business must have evolved quite a lot from, the begrudgingly made spinner rings to now. What have you noticed people change, or yeah, or has there been that education piece to bring people along as well?
It's been really nice. I mean, my business as is, I'd say, has been going for, I'd say, 6 years properly. And in that time, I have developed a nice little loyal client base, whether it's people who are just following on Insta, to people who've bought, several pieces. And that's really lovely because I know my sort of style development has gone on a bit of a journey to the point where now things look quite different to how they may have looked 6 years ago. But I think because I'm consistently producing, or I think I'm consistently producing quite bold designs, that's something that seems to ring true with people. I've also picked up quite a lot of new people who seem to gravitate towards my more geometric designs. A lot of those have come off the back of my experience, or
Yes, tell us a bit about that for anyone who doesn't know.
yes, I was a contributing maker on the second season of the BBC series Make It at Market, which aired in December. It was a really lovely experience. It was a lovely group of makers and contributors. The crew were amazing, and I think they were really um, flattering in their presentation of all of us. They made all of us look good in what we were doing, and were really kind, and I think we came across well. And off the back of that, I was sort of fortunate enough to get some lovely commissions. And again, going back to your point about gold, probably one of my biggest gold commissions was a lady who wanted a piece made for her daughter-in-law's 50th birthday. And that was based on one of my designs from my first collection, which incorporated a piece of gold. So it was a really nice circular moment. And she wanted the piece made in a combination of white and yellow gold, set with an opal and an heirloom diamond. So no pressure at all.
I love that. No pressure at all, setting that opal.
I know, exactly. So it's talking about in at the deep end, literally everything. Lots of gold to solder, a sort of lovely opal to crack, and tiny heirloom diamond not to drop on my floor and lose forever. So yeah, it was all good.
Need a lot of tea that day.
Honestly.
Chamomile tea, calming the nerves.
Yeah, but that was really lovely that, again, after the program, she took the time to go on my website. She saw that collection, saw the design, and thought, oh, how would that look with these stones in? And it was a really nice exchange. It was all done remotely. And we came up with a design that would work for her stones, but it was a really, I won't lie, nerve-wracking experience for me making it, because there was a lot of soldering going on there. But the sort of sense of satisfaction at the end of it, not only that it all stuck together, but also that she liked it and her daughter-in-law loved it and it was the right size because we had all these variables that I was unsure of. But it all came in together in the end, basically. So, for me, that was brilliant. So, the TV experience was great, but also the opportunity it gave me to do different things and try different things has been brilliant.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think, it's so nice to see how that first gold collection you made was essentially what led to that like solid gold, really quite impressive commission. And I think sometimes when we put something like that out there and maybe we don't get the sales we're hoping for right away, it can feel like some sort of failure. Everyone hasn't swarmed to us and we haven't, just got millions of orders off the back of launching a collection. But however long down the line, it's come back around and something really great has come out of it, as well as, the sales that would have come from it initially. So I think, that longevity, that's one of the things I love about these handmade jewelry businesses is there's that real longevity in our pieces. They're not sort of you make it and then a few years later no one's interested. Like we may become less interested because we've moved on to other things, but actually, it really has that timeless kind of effect to it. So that's really cool to hear about. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Ange, thank you so much for coming and sharing some of your wisdom. I know we could talk so much more around, this and everything else. I guess last question for you before we kind of wrap up, and definitely everyone to hear more about Ange and her story and to see, the docu-series with the visuals of her shed. And we had a cup of tea in the kitchen. We had a good chat and we did some making. It's a really fun episode. Definitely go and check that one out. But yeah, my final question is anyone who's listening who's sort of making that journey to start working with gold more, what advice would you give them?
Get some gold teeth.
Find yourself some gold teeth.
No, seriously, if you don't have access to gold teeth, have a chat to a jeweler friend, colleague, tutor, and just get some advice on how to start. From a financial point of view, 9 carats always good, but be warned that it is harder to work with. But I think if you have that experience of working with something that's harder, it will sort of fortify you for working with the more high quality stuff. But I would say definitely have some advice because I certainly got in touch with a few jeweler friends on Insta when I was doing my first bit of soldering, and they gave me some invaluable tips. So yeah, talk to a friend.
Talk to a friend, get support for the gold, and go for it, I guess,
Yeah,
because you
go for it. Exactly. You've got nothing to lose. If you melt it into a little ball, you can always bash it out, roll it out, and make something else out of it.
yeah, absolutely. Love that. Good metaphor for life, kind of. Um, great one to end on. But yes, and thank you so much for coming. It's been lovely to have a chat with you today. And if people want to come and find you and say hello, and congratulate you on your episode as well, what is the best place for them to do that?
The best place to find me is probably Instagram. I've been a little bit sort of hit and miss with Insta at the moment, but you can always slide into my DMs, say hello.
There's no Insta shaming here. It's all
Yeah, Instagram is generally my happy place. So yeah, do feel free to ping me on there.
great. And we'll put a link to your Instagram handle in the show notes as well. So go and give Ange a follow if you're not following her already. Go and say hello. Let her know you listen to the podcast. And yeah, we'll see you guys later in the week for Ange's episode of the Handmade Jewellers. So thanks again, Ange. We'll speak soon. Bye for now.
Yes, bye.